If you thought Isuzu was still building pickups the old-fashioned way, the 2026 D-Max X Series might change your mind, because this isn't just a tougher-looking D-Max. The latest X Series brings a new 2.2-liter turbo diesel engine, a sharper design, more modern cabin technology, and a much more aggressive personality. But here's the interesting part. Isuzu didn't try to turn the D-Max into a luxury truck. Instead, it focused on something much harder to fake, making a workhorse feel genuinely desirable. And once you look underneath the X Series styling, you start to understand why this pickup is getting so much attention. The 2026 D-Max X Series is part of the latest D-Max evolution, and in markets where this truck is officially offered, the X Series is positioned as the sporty, lifestyle-focused version of Isuzu's proven pickup. And immediately the visual difference is obvious. The blacked-out details, the red X Series accents, the more aggressive exterior treatment, the redesigned sports bar, and those X Series badges that make it clear this isn't supposed to look like an ordinary fleet truck. It's still unmistakably a D-Max, but now it looks like a D-Max that wants to be noticed. Walk around the truck and the design starts making more sense. The darker exterior elements give it a wider, more planted appearance, while the contrasting red details add just enough attitude without turning the truck into something cartoonish. And that's important because Isuzu has always had a particular reputation. Durability first, practicality first, get the job done. But the X Series adds another ingredient, personality. Inside, that theme continues. The cabin isn't trying to imitate a six-figure luxury pickup. Instead, it takes a functional truck interior and gives it a more distinctive character. Depending on the X Series version, you can get black upholstery, red stitching, X Series branding, upgraded instrumentation, and an 8-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's also a 7-inch multi-information display on higher versions. So while the truck remains fundamentally practical, the experience behind the wheel feels considerably more modern. And then there's the part that really matters: the engine. For the 2026 X Series in Thailand, Isuzu introduced its 2.2-liter DD Max Force turbo diesel. It's a 4-cylinder diesel displacing 2,164 cubic centimeters, producing 163 horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque. That torque arrives from 1,600 to 2,600 RPM. And that's exactly where a diesel pickup starts to make sense. You don't need to chase the engine toward the top of the rev range. You want the truck to respond when you're pulling away from a stop, climbing a hill, carrying equipment, or moving through difficult terrain. Isuzu pairs the engine with either a 6-speed manual or an 8-speed automatic, depending on the configuration. And that 8-speed automatic is one of the more interesting changes, because the goal isn't simply to make the D-Max faster. It's to make the power delivery smoother, more usable, and easier to live with. That's a very different philosophy from simply chasing the biggest horsepower number. And it fits Isuzu. This is a company whose pickup reputation has been built around durability and real-world usefulness. The X Series simply wraps that philosophy in a much more aggressive package. But there's another reason this truck stands out. It isn't trying to win the pickup war by becoming the biggest truck on the road. The D-Max is fundamentally a different kind of pickup. Think about the American market for a moment. A Ford Ranger, a Toyota Tacoma, a Chevrolet Colorado, a GMC Canyon. These trucks occupy a very important part of the American pickup landscape. They're smaller and more maneuverable than full-size pickups, while still offering the capability many owners actually need. The D-Max belongs to that broader global mid-size pickup conversation, but there's a major complication for American viewers. The D-Max isn't currently sold as a mainstream new pickup in the United States. So when you see headlines suggesting that the 2026 D-Max X Series is coming directly for American truck buyers, that's something to treat carefully. The truck itself is real. The technology is real. The X Series is real. But availability depends heavily on the market. And that actually makes the D-Max even more interesting. Because outside the United States, this truck has become a major part of Isuzu's global pickup strategy. And the latest X Series shows where that strategy is heading. More technology, more refinement, more visual attitude, but without abandoning the basic idea of what a D-Max is supposed to be. A dependable diesel pickup. And that's where the engineering becomes more interesting than the styling. The 2.2L Max Force engine is designed around strong, low-end torque rather than simply impressive peak output. That means the number on the brochure isn't the whole story. What matters is how the engine delivers that torque. Imagine you're leaving pavement and heading onto a rough trail. The surface changes. The tires start searching for traction. The vehicle needs controlled power rather than a sudden burst. That's where a torque-focused diesel powertrain can make a real difference. And on higher spec versions, the D-Max can bring serious off-road hardware into the equation, including 4-wheel, drive and terrain-focused systems, depending on market and trim. So the X Series isn't just wearing an off-road costume. There is real capability underneath it. But Isuzu also understands that most owners aren't spending every morning crawling over rocks. They're driving to work, They're carrying equipment. They're taking the family somewhere on the weekend. They're spending hours on highways, and that's why the cabin and everyday technology matter. The latest X series can offer wireless smartphone integration, USB-C connectivity, cruise control, upgraded displays, rear air conditioning vents on certain versions, and practical storage throughout the cabin. These aren't the kinds of features that create viral headlines, but they're the features you actually notice after living with a vehicle. And that distinction matters, because a pickup can look incredible in a 30-second video and become frustrating after 30 days of ownership. The X series approach is different. Give the truck attitude on the outside, give the driver modern technology inside, and keep the underlying vehicle focused on practical use. Then comes the question every buyer eventually asks: how much does it cost? Pricing varies dramatically by country and configuration, so there isn't one universal 2026 D-Max X series price. For example, the Thai market XC series range has been officially priced in the hundreds of thousands of Thai baht, with different body styles, transmissions, and equipment levels affecting the final figure. And that matters because the X series isn't one single truck. There are different configurations, different drivetrains, different equipment levels, and different markets. So comparing one country's price directly with another country's, D-Max can be misleading. The same thing applies to specifications. The 2.2-liter max force powertrain is a major part of the latest XC series story in Thailand, while other markets continue to offer different D-Max engines and configurations. That's why the smartest way to look at the 2026 D-Max is not as one universal specification sheet. It's as a global pickup platform adapted for different buyers. And that brings us back to the biggest question. What is the X series actually trying to accomplish? It's not trying to turn Isuzu into Ford. It's not trying to become Toyota. And it's definitely not trying to make the D-Max something it isn't. Instead, Isuzu is taking the qualities people already associate with the D-Max: durability, diesel efficiency, practicality, and utility, and adding something that older generations didn't emphasize quite as much: desire. Because a pickup doesn't have to be purely practical anymore. For many buyers, the truck is part of their identity. It's what they drive to work. It's what they take on road trips. It's what sits in the driveway. It's what they use for camping, hauling, exploring, and everyday life. And the X series understands that. It says you can want a tough truck and still care about how it looks. You can want durability and still want technology. You can want a diesel workhorse and still want something that feels special when you walk toward it. That's the real story of the 2026 Isuzu D-Max X series. It isn't the wildest pickup, it isn't the most powerful, and it isn't trying to win the specification war at any cost. Its appeal comes from balance. A proven pickup philosophy wrapped in a more aggressive design, backed by a new generation diesel powertrain and enough modern technology to make the truck feel relevant in 2026. And if Isuzu can continue pushing that balance without losing the durability that built the D-Max name, the X series could be more important than it first appears. Because the future of the pickup isn't necessarily about making trucks bigger. It may be about making them smarter, more efficient, more capable, and more desirable, without forgetting why people bought them in the first place. And that's exactly what makes the 2026 D-Max X series worth watching. Not because it's trying to be everything, but because it knows exactly what kind of truck it wants to be. And for the right driver, that may be the most important specification of all.